A signature on the contract, and Caleb's fate changes forever. When a simple business decision leads him to Leah Harrison, he discovers that his past is linked to hers in a way no one expected. Secrets buried for 15 years begin to surface. And what he'll uncover could destroy his empire. The New York sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that reflected off the mirrored facades of the skyscrapers. Caleb Foster observed the city from his office on the 85th floor, an empire built with determination and strategy over 2 decades. His dark brown eyes, always alert, scanned the urban landscape as his mind calculated the next business move. The meeting with foreign investors had gone longer than planned, but the result compensated for the fatigue. Another billion-dollar project would be erected in the heart of the city's financial district, further consolidating the Foster name in the real estate market. Caleb adjusted the golden tie of his impeccable white suit, a habit he had maintained since his youth. "Mr. Foster," his assistant's voice sounded over the intercom, "your brother Tyler is waiting for the 7 p.m. meeting." "Send him in, Sarah," he replied without taking his eyes off the city he had helped build. Tyler Foster entered the room with the characteristic energy of younger brothers. At 35, he was the more modern image of the family, wearing an Italian suit instead of traditional business attire, hair perfectly styled, and a smile that hid greater ambitions than he showed. "So, brother, I heard we closed the Marina Heights project," Tyler began, helping himself to some mineral water. "The Chinese finally gave in to our price?" "Not only did they give in, but they also accepted our proposal for the second phase expansion," Caleb replied, finally turning to face his brother. "But you didn't come here to talk about Marina Heights, did you?" Tyler laughed, placing the glass on the black marble table. "Always straight to the point. It's about the medical district revitalization project. We need your signature to start the demolitions of the old buildings." "Including Mercy Medical Center?" Caleb asked, a shadow of hesitation in his usually unshakable voice. "Especially Mercy. It's the most valuable land in the area, and that hospital is practically bankrupt. It will be a clean acquisition. No complications. The lawyers have already prepared all the documentation." Caleb walked to his desk, fingers sliding over the polished surface as he considered the implications. Mercy was one of the last mid-sized private hospitals in the region, serving a population that couldn't afford the costs of large medical centers, but also didn't qualify for the public healthcare system. "Send the documents for my review. I'll decide by tomorrow," he finally replied, his voice not betraying the internal conflict that was beginning to form. "Caleb," Tyler approached, resting his hands on his brother's desk, "we can't waste time with sentimentality. The market doesn't wait." "Since when did asking for 24 hours to analyze a contract become sentimentality?" Caleb retorted, his tone making it clear that the discussion was over. Tyler backed off, adjusting his tie in a gesture of contained frustration. "As you wish. But remember, our investors are counting on this. The medical district project is the key to expanding our presence in the healthcare sector." After his brother's departure, Caleb allowed himself a moment of reflection. 2 decades building an empire, and each decision seemed to weigh more than the previous one. The sun had completely disappeared now, leaving the city covered by a blanket of artificial lights that twinkled like earthly stars. He decided to go down to the parking garage, needing to clear his head. The air conditioning in the Rolls-Royce couldn't completely dissipate the heat still emanating from the asphalt as he left the building. His driver, Adam, remained silent, knowing well the boss's mood after long meetings. It was when they passed in front of Mercy Medical Center that something caught his attention. A woman was arguing heatedly with the security guards at the hospital entrance. Her dark blue headscarf was slightly askew, revealing strands of black hair that framed a face marked by distress. "Adam, stop the car," Caleb ordered, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding. The woman was holding a boy who couldn't have been more than 6 years old in her arms. The child was visibly debilitated, his pale skin contrasting with the sweat running down his forehead. "Please, he's had a fever for 3 days," her voice trembled. "I can pay in installments. I have a steady job." "I'm sorry, Mom," the security guard responded mechanically. Without advance payment or health insurance, we can't authorize admission. Caleb watched as she staggered, the weight of her son and despair almost bringing her to the ground. Something about that scene awakened a distant memory, a fragment of his own history that he had long tried to forget. "Adam, call Dr. Howard," he ordered, getting out of the car before he could rationalize his decision. "Ma'am," his deep voice cut through the night air, making the woman and the security guards turn in surprise. "I'm Caleb Foster. Your son will receive all necessary treatment, and I'll personally take responsibility for all costs." Her eyes, large and dark as the desert night, met his with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. I can't accept," she stammered. "What's your name?" he asked, ignoring her hesitation. "Leah Harrison," she replied, adjusting her son in her arms. "And this is Aaron." "Well, Leah Harrison, now is not the time for pride. Your son needs medical care, and I'm in a position to provide it. Accept my help." Before she could respond, Dr. Howard, the hospital director, and an old acquaintance of Caleb's arrived hurriedly. Within minutes, Aaron was being taken inside, accompanied by a medical team. "Thank you," Leah whispered, silent tears running down her face. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Don't think about that now. Focus on your son," Caleb replied, surprising himself with the softness in his own voice. As he watched Leah hurriedly follow the doctors, Caleb felt something strange stir in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years, as if fate had just set in motion gears long stopped. His phone vibrated. It was Tyler again, probably insisting on the project documents. Caleb looked one last time at the corridor where Leah had disappeared and then at the aging facade of Mercy Medical Center. At that moment, something in his convictions began to change, although he didn't yet know how much that encounter would transform his life. What had begun as another normal day in the life of the powerful businessman had transformed into the beginning of a journey that would test not only his certainties, but also reveal secrets long buried in the past. New York continued its nocturnal dance of lights and shadows, oblivious to the drama that was beginning to unfold in its innards of concrete and glass. The soft light of morning filtered through the curtains of the hospital room where Aaron rested. Leah, seated in the armchair, next to the bed, watched her son sleep peacefully for the first time in days. The heart monitors emitted rhythmic beeps, confirming that the fever had finally subsided after a night of intensive care. The nurse entered silently to check the boy's vital signs. "His temperature is normal now," she whispered with a gentle smile. "Dr. Howard will be doing his rounds soon." Leah nodded, unconsciously adjusting her headscarf. Her hands still trembled slightly when she thought about the events of the previous night. Caleb Foster's austere face appeared in her mind like a mirage. A man she knew only through the pages of magazines and news reports had emerged from nowhere to help her in her most desperate moment. Outside the hospital, Caleb faced an atypical morning in his office. The documents for the Medical District Revitalization Project remained untouched on his desk, while he reread for the third time the report his assistant had just delivered about Leah Harrison. "English literature professor at New York University," he muttered to himself. "Widowed for 2 years, modest income, no close relatives in the city. Investigating our newest protege?" Tyler's voice surprised him at the office door. "It's not typical of the great Caleb Foster to get involved in charity cases." "It's not charity," Caleb replied dryly, putting the report in a drawer. "It's professional interest." Tyler raised an eyebrow, sitting down uninvited. "Professional interest in a university professor, or is it something related to her name?" "What are you talking about?" "Harrison," Tyler pronounced the surname slowly. "Doesn't it remind you of someone? Perhaps from the time when our father was still running the company?" Caleb felt an involuntary shiver run down his spine. Long-suppressed memories threatened to emerge, but he forced them back to the recesses of his mind. "I don't have time for your insinuations, Tyler. If you came for the Mercy document—" "Actually," Tyler interrupted him, "I came to warn you. The board is restless with your recent behavior. First, the hesitation with the medical district project. Now this sudden interest in a professor and her sick child. Some are beginning to question whether you still maintain the pragmatism necessary to lead the group. The board should worry about the results, which continue to be exceptional, not my personal decisions, Caleb responded, his voice laden with authority. At the hospital, Leah was receiving a visit from Dr. Howard. The doctor explained that Aaron had developed a severe bacterial infection, but that the treatment was already showing positive results. Mrs. Harrison, the doctor hesitated for a moment. There's something I need to ask. Your surname, does it have any relation to Isaac Harrison? Leah's face paled slightly. He was my father, she replied with a trembling voice. Did you know him? Many years ago, Dr. Howard replied vaguely. He was an interesting man. Before Leah could ask more questions, a nurse hurriedly entered, informing them that Aaron had woken up. The boy slowly opened his eyes, a small smile forming on his lips as he saw his mother. "Mum," he whispered hoarsely, "I dreamed about Dad." Leah held her son's hand, swallowing the lump that formed in her throat. "Rest, sweetheart. You need to regain your strength." Later that afternoon, Caleb decided to visit the hospital. He found Leah in the hallway buying juice from a vending machine. "Mrs. Harrison," he called softly, noticing how she startled at the sound of his voice. "How is your son?" "Mr. Foster," she turned, holding the juice tightly. "Aaron is much better thanks to your generosity. I really need to find a way to repay you." "As I said yesterday, it's not necessary," Caleb interrupted her, studying her face carefully. There was something familiar about her features, something that provoked an uneasiness in his core. "But I confess I have some questions." Leah felt her heart race. "Questions?" "Yes. For example, why doesn't a university professor have health insurance?" "It's complicated," she averted her gaze. After I was left alone with Aaron, a lot changed. The university salary barely covers our basic expenses." Caleb noticed the discomfort in her voice and decided not to press further. However, before he could change the subject, his phone vibrated with a message from Tyler. "We need to talk. I've discovered something about her past that you need to know." "Mrs. Harrison," Caleb resumed, putting away his phone, "I'd like to make a proposal. The university where you teach has a partnership with our business group. I can arrange a full scholarship for Aaron, including health insurance." Leah's eyes widened. "But why? You've already done so much." "Let's say it's an investment." "In the future," he replied with a half-smile. "Your son seems to be a bright boy." At that moment, a nurse approached hurriedly. "Mrs. Harrison, Aaron is asking for you." Leah hesitated, looking between the nurse and Caleb. "I need to go," he nodded. "We'll talk another time." As he watched her walk away, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting involved in something much bigger than a simple act of charity. The name Harrison continued to echo in his mind, connecting to fragments of memories he preferred to keep buried. In his office, Tyler opened an old file, yellowed by time. On the first page, a faded photo showed two men, his father and Isaac Harrison, partners in a venture that had almost destroyed the Foster family 15 years ago. His eyes scanned a specific document, and an enigmatic smile formed on his lips. "So that's why you're protecting her, brother," he murmured to himself. "But you have no idea what's really at stake." In the Foster Group's meeting room, the silence was as dense as the morning desert fog. Caleb observed the presentation of the Medical District Revitalization Project, but his mind wandered to the file Tyler had mentioned. 15 years was enough time for scars to close, but not for memories to completely fade. "Mr. Foster," the voice of the chief architect brought him back to the present. "About the demolition of Mercy Medical Center. The project is temporarily suspended," he announced, causing a wave of murmurs among those present. "I want a complete reassessment of the social impact before we proceed." Tyler, seated beside him, visibly tensed. The other board members exchanged concerned looks. Caleb Foster had never prioritized social impact in his decisions before. On The New York University campus, Leah tried to maintain focus in her class on classic English literature. Her students were animatedly discussing Shakespeare's verses, but she couldn't help her thoughts from returning to Caleb's proposal. "Professor, Harrison," a student called her after class. "Are you all right? You seem worried." "I'm fine, Emily," she smiled, organizing her books. "Just tired. Aaron is still recovering." At the mention of her son, her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Dr. Howard. "We need to discuss Aaron's test results. It's important." Her heart raced. She hurried through the university corridors, almost colliding with a man photographing the bulletin board. He quickly put away his camera, apologizing in English with an American accent. At the hospital, Dr. Howard was waiting for her with a grave expression. "Mrs. Harrison, we've discovered something in Aaron's tests that requires special attention. He has a rare genetic condition." "Genetic condition?" Leah felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "How serious is it?" "It's treatable but requires continuous medication and constant monitoring," the doctor explained. "The treatment is quite costly." Leah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "How much?" When the doctor mentioned the amount, she felt tears forming. It was more than her annual salary. "Mrs. Harrison," Dr. Howard hesitated, "there's something else I need to tell you. This condition, it's hereditary, usually transmitted on the paternal side." "But how?" "Aaron's father never showed any symptoms. I'm not just referring to his father," the doctor lowered his voice. "I'm talking about your own family lineage. Mrs. Harrison, your father, Isaac." Before he could finish, they were interrupted by a nurse. "Doctor, Mr. Foster is on the phone. It's urgent." In Caleb's office, Tyler spread old documents on the desk. "Look at this," he pointed to a yellowed photo. "Isaac Harrison and our father at the inauguration of their first joint venture." Caleb studied the image. His father, younger and smiling, next to a man with penetrating eyes that seemed strangely familiar to him. "What really happened back then, Tyler? Why did Dad never talk about Isaac Harrison?" "Because some truths are too dangerous," Tyler answered, sliding another document across the table. "Especially when they involve family secrets." Caleb picked up the paper, his eyes scanning the typewritten lines. His expression gradually changed from curiosity to shock. "This can't be true," he murmured. "It's just the tip of the iceberg." Tyler leaned forward. "The question is, what do you intend to do now?" In the hospital room, Aaron was drawing while Leah spoke quietly with a social worker. "Mrs. Harrison, with your permission, we'd like to do a more in-depth investigation of your family's medical history," the assistant explained. "It can help us better understand Aaron's condition." "I don't know if I can help much," Leah replied, hesitantly. "I lost contact with my father's family years ago after his departure, and about my late husband's family." "I understand your reluctance," the assistant smiled gently, "but any information can be crucial." In the corridor, the man Leah had seen at the university discreetly observed the scene, making notes on his cell phone. His visitor's badge identified him as John Parker, correspondent for the New York Times. In her apartment that night, Leah opened an old box she kept under the bed. Among yellowed photographs and documents, she found a sealed envelope with the Foster family crest. Her hands trembled as she recognized her father's handwriting on the back, "For my Leah, to be opened only when absolutely necessary." The phone rang, startling her. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Harrison," a female voice spoke, "this is Sarah, Mr. Foster's assistant. He would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night to discuss Aaron's future." Leah looked at the envelope in her hands, then at her father's photo on the nightstand. Fate seemed to be weaving a complex web, connecting past and present in ways she didn't yet fully understand. In Caleb's office, the night was already late when he finally finished reading all the documents Tyler had brought. His mind was buzzing with revelations and possibilities. The empire he had built so carefully now seemed to be on much more fragile foundations than he had imagined. His phone vibrated with a text message. "Mr. Foster, this is John Parker from the New York Times. Would you care to comment on your connection to the Harrison family? I have information that might be of interest to you." The restaurant atop the Empire State Building shone like a jewel against the New York night sky. Caleb waited in the private area, his fingers gently drumming on the table as he observed the city through the panoramic windows. The envelope Tyler had shown him was tucked in his jacket pocket, weighing like lead against his chest. Leah arrived punctually at 8, wearing a navy blue silk scarf that accentuated the depth of her eyes. For a moment, Caleb was paralyzed. The resemblance to the photo he had seen earlier was striking. "Mrs. Harrison," he stood to greet her, "thank you for accepting my invitation." "You've been very generous," she replied, sitting with contained grace. "Aaron is responding well to the treatment." A sommelier approached to serve mineral water, and Caleb noticed how Leah's hands trembled slightly as she held the glass. She was nervous, and with good reason. "I received an interesting call today," he began, studying her reaction. "A journalist from the New York Times, John Parker. Is the name familiar to you?" Leah paled slightly. "He was at the university today. I thought I saw him photographing the bulletin board." "And then at the hospital," Caleb completed. "He seems very interested in our sudden connection." The waiter arrived with the appetizers, providing a brief moment of pause in the tense conversation. Leah took the opportunity to compose herself. "Mr. Foster," she began after a few moments, "there's something I need to show you." Her hands trembled as she removed an envelope from her purse, the same one she had found in her father's box. Caleb felt his heart race as he recognized his family's crest on the seal. "Where did you get this?" "My father left it for me before his departure," she hesitated. "I never had the courage to open it." "And why are you showing it to me now?" "Because ever since you appeared that night at the hospital, I feel it wasn't a coincidence. Dr. Howard started asking questions about my father, Aaron was diagnosed with a rare genetic condition, and now this journalist—" Caleb reached for the envelope in his jacket, placing it on the table next to the one Leah had brought. "Perhaps it's time for both of us to discover the truth." At the hospital, Tyler was talking with Dr. Howard in his private office. "So the results confirm it?" "Yes," the doctor replied nervously. "The genetic pattern is unmistakable, but I don't understand why so much interest in the boy's case." "Let's say it's a family matter," Tyler smiled enigmatically. "Continue the treatment normally. No one should know about this conversation." At the restaurant, Leah and Caleb simultaneously opened their envelopes. The silence that followed was deafening. "This isn't possible," Leah whispered, her eyes scanning the old document lines several times. Caleb felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. The words on the paper seemed to dance before his eyes, rearranging everything. He believed he knew about his own history. "So your father," he began, his voice hoarse. "Isaac Harrison, he wasn't just my father's partner." "No," Leah confirmed, silent tears running down her face. "They were brothers." The sound of a camera clicking made them turn abruptly. John Parker was standing a few meters away, his phone pointed in their direction. Before the security guards could reach him, the journalist had already disappeared among the other guests. "We need to get out of here." Caleb stood up, offering his hand to Leah. "It's not safe to talk about this in public." In the private elevator, descending the 86 floors of the Empire State Building, the silence between them was laden with unasked questions. Leah held the documents against her chest as if they were a shield. "Why did they keep this a secret?" she finally asked. "Why separate the families?" "I don't know," Caleb answered honestly. "But I intend to find out. There's more in the documents Tyler found, things that might explain much of what happened 15 years ago." In the hotel lobby, a familiar figure awaited them, Tyler with a somber expression on his face. "So you already know," he said, looking between the two, "but you don't know everything yet. And maybe it's better that way." "What are you talking about?" Caleb stepped forward, instinctively protecting Leah. "Some truths are better left in the past, brother," Tyler smiled humorlessly, "especially when they can destroy empires." At that moment, Leah's cell phone rang. It was the hospital. Something had happened to Aaron. The hospital corridor echoed with Leah and Caleb's hurried footsteps. Dr. Howard was waiting for them at Aaron's room door, his expression unreadable under the fluorescent lights. "What happened to my son?" Leah asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "Aaron had a reaction to the new medication," the doctor explained, "but we managed to stabilize him quickly. In fact, this led us to an important discovery." Inside the room, Aaron slept serenely, his small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The monitors beside him showed normal vital signs. "What discovery?" Caleb questioned, his voice tenser than he intended to show. Dr. Howard closed the room door behind them. "Aaron's genetic condition, and it's the same one that affected your grandfather, Mr. Foster." Leah gasped, her legs weakening. Caleb instinctively supported her, guiding her to a nearby chair. "My father had this condition?" he asked, memories of his childhood suddenly gaining new meaning. "Yes, as did Isaac Harrison," the doctor confirmed. "That's why I recognized the symptoms so quickly in Aaron. I treated both of them years ago." At the other end of the corridor, Tyler observed the scene, his phone pressed against his ear. "Yes, they just found out. No, they don't know about the will yet, or about the special clause." In his office at the New York Times, John Parker was organizing a series of documents on his desk. Old photos showed Ibrahim Harrison and Caleb's father in different occasions, always close, always smiling. One document in particular stood out, a partnership contract with a clause underlined in red. "The inheritance will be divided equally between the direct descendants of both brothers," Parker read aloud, a smile forming on his lips. "This is going to shake up New York's real estate market." At the hospital, Leah held Aaron's hand while absorbing the night's revelations. "Why did my father never tell me about this?" "Perhaps for the same reason my father kept it a secret," Caleb responded, leaning against the window. "To protect us." "Protect us from what?" she questioned, her eyes meeting his. Before Caleb could answer, his assistant Sarah burst into the room, visibly agitated. "Mr. Foster, you need to see this immediately." On her tablet, a notification from the New York Times flashed, "Foster Empire, built on family secrets, full story tomorrow." "Parker," Caleb muttered, his jaw tensing. "He works fast." "That's not all," Sarah continued. "The board has called an emergency meeting. They're questioning your leadership after the suspension of the medical district project." Leah observed the interaction with growing concern. "Is all this because of me?" "No," Caleb approached, his voice softening. "It's because of decisions made long before us, but now we need to deal with the consequences." Aaron stirred in the bed, his eyes opening slowly. "Mom?" "Uncle Caleb." The silence that followed was deafening. It was the first time the boy had referred to Caleb that way. Dr. Howard discreetly cleared his throat. "With your permission, I'd like to run some more tests. The genetic condition that Aaron presents, there are experimental treatments that can help." "What kind of treatments?" Leah asked. "The same that saved your father, Mrs. Harrison," the doctor replied, "and Caleb's father." In the corridor, Tyler ended his mysterious call and approached the room. Through the window, he observed the family scene unfolding, Caleb and Leah by Aaron's bedside, united by bonds that went far beyond coincidence. "If they only knew," he muttered to himself, clutching an envelope in his pocket. "If they knew what really happened that night 15 years ago." The sun was beginning to rise over New York, its first lights reflecting off the skyscraper's glass. In a few hours, the city would wake up to a story that would shake its power structures. But inside that hospital room, something more important was happening. A family, long divided, was beginning to reconnect. The New York Times headlined the story that would shake the market. Foster Empire, a story of family secrets. In the lobby of Foster Tower, executives and employees whispered about the revelations, their gazes alternating between their smartphones and the screens displaying the stock market in real time. Caleb remained impassive in his conference room, while board members entered one by one. The company's stock value had fallen 15% in the first hours of trading, a financial hemorrhage that threatened to worsen. "This is unacceptable," exclaimed Andrew Richardson, the oldest board member. Decades of reputation threatened because of family sentimentality? Tyler took his usual place to Caleb's right, his face a mask of studied concern. "Brother, perhaps it's time to consider a temporary leave." "Leave?" Caleb interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Interesting suggestion. Coming from you, Tyler, especially considering that you were the one who provided the information to Parker." A heavy silence fell over the room. Tyler visibly paled. At the hospital, Leah was reading the article on her tablet, her hands trembling. The piece detailed how Ibrahim Harrison and Caleb's father had built the empire together, how a mysterious dispute had separated them, and how the truth about the group's ownership had remained hidden for years. "Mom?" Aaron called, noticing her agitation. "Why are you sad?" "I'm not sad, sweetheart," she forced a smile. "Just thinking about your grandfather." Dr. Howard entered the room carrying a thick folder. "Mrs. Harrison, I found the old medical records. There's something you need to see." In the conference room, Caleb was projecting documents on the main screen. "Before you make any hasty decisions, look at this." The images showed original contracts, signed by his father and Ibrahim Harrison. The company never belonged only to the Foster family. It was built by two brothers, with equal participation. "This is absurd," Andrew protested. "If it were true, where are the Harrison heirs to claim their part?" "They're closer than you think," Caleb replied, his gaze fixed on Tyler. "And you knew that all along, didn't you, brother?" Tyler stood up abruptly. "You don't understand, Caleb. Everything I did was to protect our family." "Protect or ensure that the truth never came to light?" At the hospital, Leah was examining the documents Dr. Howard had brought. "This means—" "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "The experimental treatment that saved your father and Caleb's father was developed here, at Mercy Medical Center. The costs were secretly covered by the joint fund of both families. The hospital that Caleb almost demolished is part of both families' legacy," Dr. Howard completed. Maybe that's why he hesitated. In the conference room, Caleb continued his revelation. "Mercy is not just a hospital. It's the symbol of how our families used to work together, putting people above profit." "And now you want to throw all that away?" Tyler questioned. "Because of a teacher and her sick son?" "No," Caleb responded firmly, "because of the truth and the justice our fathers deserve." His phone vibrated. It was a message from Leah. "We need to talk. Dr. Howard found something in the hospital archives." At the New York Times, John Parker was receiving an anonymous call. "Mr. Parker, there's more to the Foster and Harrison family's story that you need to know. Something that happened on the night the brothers separated." In his private office, Tyler was opening a safe hidden behind a painting. Inside was a red folder with the inscription, "Project Phoenix, Confidential." His hands trembled as he leafed through the old pages. "I'm sorry, brother," he muttered, "but some truths need to remain buried." The afternoon sun tinged New York's sky in shades of gold and red, reflecting off the skyscrapers' facades like an omen. The city that had witnessed the rise of the Foster Empire now silently observed as its foundations were exposed, revealing a story much more complex than anyone could have imagined. In the private library of the Foster mansion, Caleb examined the red folder he had found in Tyler's safe. The title, Project Phoenix, gleamed in golden letters under the lamplight, while his hands went through documents that revealed an even more complex story than he had imagined. "So this was it," he muttered, connecting the pieces of the puzzle. "The experimental treatment at Mercy wasn't just to save our fathers." At the hospital, Leah watched Dr. Howard explain Aaron's latest results. The doctor pointed to DNA sequences on his tablet, his words carefully chosen. "Aaron's genetic condition is unique," he explained, "just like his grandfather's and Caleb's fathers. In fact, it was this uniqueness that led to the development of Project Phoenix." "What exactly are you talking about?" Leah asked, her heart racing. 15 years ago, your father and Caleb's father weren't just building a real estate empire. They were secretly funding revolutionary research here at Mercy." At the New York Times headquarters, John Parker was organizing a timeline on his board. Photos, documents, and newspaper clippings connected by red threads told a story that went far beyond a simple family dispute. Project Phoenix, he muttered, circling the words. The key to everything. His phone rang. It was his anonymous source again. Mr. Parker, I found something that will interest you. A record of a bank transfer from the night Ibrahim Harrison disappeared. In Tyler's office, he stared at the city through the window while talking on the phone. No, they can't access those files. If they discover the truth about the project, yes, I understand the gravity of the situation. Caleb continued his investigation in the library when Sarah entered hurriedly. Sir, we found something in the digitized archives. An email exchanged between your father and Ibrahim Harrison on the night of the separation. The messages revealed a heated discussion about the future of Project Phoenix. Ibrahim wanted to make the treatment accessible to everyone, while Caleb's father argued that they needed more tests, more control. At the hospital, Aaron was drawing, in his notebook, a multicolored phoenix rising from the ashes. Mom, the doctor said I'm special, like the bird from the legend. Leah felt tears in her eyes. Her father used to tell the same story, about the phoenix that is reborn, stronger after each trial. Dr. Howard returned with more files. Mrs. Harrison, we found the original records of Project Phoenix, your family's DNA. It has a unique characteristic, a mutation that, although it causes the condition, also offers extraordinary healing possibilities. That's why my father and Caleb's father invested so much in this research, Leah concluded. It wasn't just for them. It was for all future generations, the doctor confirmed, including Aaron. At the mansion, Caleb was reaching the end of the documents when a loose photo caught his attention. It showed his father and Ibrahim in a Mercy laboratory, smiling alongside a team of researchers. On the back, a note, Project Phoenix, final. Phase, the cure is near. His phone vibrated with a message from Tyler. Brother, we need to talk about the night everything changed. At the New York Times, Parker was finally completing his puzzle. My God, he whispered, observing the complex web of connections. It wasn't a fight that separated the families. It was an impossible decision. In his hospital room, Aaron continued drawing, now adding 2 figures next to the phoenix. 2 men holding hands, smiling under a golden sun. They're the 2 brothers, he explained when Leah asked. The doctor told me the story. They were like the phoenix. They wanted to help people be reborn. Caleb arrived at the hospital late in the afternoon, the red folder under his arm. His eyes met Leah's, and both knew it was time for the complete truth. Project Phoenix, he began, wasn't just about finding a cure. It was about creating a legacy that would transcend generations. In the hospital parking lot, Tyler observed the scene through the windows of Aaron's room. His phone rang once more. It was the contact who had been pressing for answers for weeks. Yes, he answered. They're about to discover everything. And when that happens, nothing will be the same. On the penthouse of the Foster Group, Caleb and Leah sat across from Tyler, the red folder of Project Phoenix open on the glass table. The setting sun of New York transformed the office into a kaleidoscope of golden lights. The separation of the families, Tyler began, his voice carrying an old weight, wasn't about money or power. It was to protect the project. Leah held firmly onto the necklace her father had given her, a small phoenix-shaped pendant. Protecty? It from what? From whom? Tyler corrected. There was a pharmaceutical group interested in the commercial potential of the research. They discovered that our family's DNA could be the key to revolutionary treatments. At the hospital, Dr. Howard was showing Aaron microscopic images of cells. See how they glow. They're special, like you. Like the phoenix, the boy asked, his eyes shining with curiosity. Exactly like the phoenix, the doctor smiled. In the penthouse, Tyler continued his revelation. Ibrahim and our father realized that if the pharmaceutical group took control of the research, the treatment would become inaccessible to most people. So they made a drastic decision. They faked a fight, Caleb completed, the pieces finally fitting together, separated the families to protect the project. Mercy was the center of everything, Tyler explained. While everyone thought it was just another hospital, the research continued in the underground laboratories. Ibrahim secretly coordinated, while our father maintained appearances in the business group. Leah opened her bag, taking out an old key. My father gave me this before he left. He said one day I would understand. The key to the main laboratory, Tyler recognized, where all the genetic material is stored. At the New York Times, Parker was receiving an anonymous envelope. Inside, photos of Mercy's secret laboratory, showing advanced equipment and revolutionary research. The real story isn't about a real estate empire, he muttered, rewriting his headline. It's about a legacy of healing. In the penthouse, Caleb stood up, walking to the window. Why didn't you tell us before, Tyler? Because the pharmaceutical group never gave up, he replied. They kept looking, investigating. We needed to maintain the facade until the research was complete. And now, Leah asked, her heart racing. Now, Caleb turned. It's time to honor our parents' true legacy. Mercy won't be demolished. It will be transformed into the largest genetic research center in the eastern United States. At the hospital, Aaron was finishing his Phoenix drawing, now adding a large building under its wings. It's the hospital, Mom. The doctor said this is where the magic happens. Dr. Howard entered the room with a wide smile. The latest results are in. The treatment is working exactly as we hoped. In the penthouse, Tyler opened his laptop, showing a presentation. This is the real Project Phoenix, a medical center that will combine cutting-edge research with accessible treatment. Using our family's unique DNA, we can develop cures for diseases that once seemed impossible. Just as our fathers always dreamed, Leah whispered, tears in her eyes. And Aaron? Caleb asked his brother. He'll be the first of a new generation. Tyler smiled genuinely for the first time in years. His DNA carries the future of the project. In the reception of the foster group, an elderly woman discreetly observed the commotion. Sarah recognized her. She was the former head nurse of Mercy, who had worked with Ibrahim and Caleb's father since the beginning of the project. Finally, the lady murmured, a serene smile on her wrinkled face. The Phoenix is being reborn. The rising sun illuminated the renovated facade of Mercy Medical Center. A crowd gathered for the re-inauguration ceremony, while TV cameras broadcast the event live that would change the medical landscape in the eastern United States. Caleb adjusted the microphone on the podium, Leah by his side. The front page of the New York Times was framed in the entrance hall. Project Phoenix, How Two Families Revolutionized Medicine. Today, Caleb began, we don't just celebrate the renovation of a hospital. We celebrate the realization of the dream of two brothers who believe that healing should be a right, not a privilege. In the hospital's VIP room, Aaron watched the broadcast on TV, surrounded by Phoenix drawings that decorated the walls. Dr. Howard checked his latest exams, smiling satisfied with the results. The treatment was a complete success, he explained to the nurse. The family's special DNA worked exactly as Ibrahim and Michael Foster predicted. In the audience, executives from the pharmaceutical group that had tried to control the project years ago watched with tense expressions. Their plans to monopolize the research had been definitively thwarted. Tyler, now research director of the new center, presented the expansion plans. The Phoenix Medical Center will be a beacon of hope for millions. Our genetic research has already identified potential treatments for dozens of conditions considered untreatable. John Parker from the New York Times was taking notes furiously. His story about the real estate empire had transformed into a much bigger story, a saga about family, science, and redemption. The underground laboratories, Tyler continued, will be expanded to create the largest genetic research center in the Eastern Hemisphere. And thanks to the generosity of our international partners, treatments will be accessible to all who need them. Leah discreetly held Caleb's hand, tears of pride in her eyes. Our parents would be proud, she whispered. In the financial market, Foster Group shares were soaring. The revelation of Project Phoenix had transformed the company from a real estate giant into a biotechnology powerhouse. Partnership agreements with leading research centers are already signed, Sarah informed a group of investors. The potential is limitless. At the end of the ceremony, Caleb and Leah visited Aaron. The boy was playing with a tablet, projecting DNA holograms that danced in the air. Uncle Caleb, Aaron called. The doctor said my cells are magical, that they can help other children. They're magical like you, sweetheart, Leah smiled, hugging her son. Dr. Howard entered with the latest reports. The research applications are exceeding our expectations. The combined DNA of the Foster and Harrison families has created possibilities that science never imagined. In the hospital's new garden, a bronze statue was unveiled, two men holding hands looking towards the horizon with a phoenix perched on their shoulders. On the base, an inscription in English, "To Ibrahim and Michael, brothers who dreamed of a better world." The former head nurse, now a project consultant, observed the commotion with teary eyes. "They always knew," she said to Tyler. "They knew that one day their families would reunite again, stronger." At night, after the ceremony, Caleb found Leah in the library of the Foster mansion. She was holding the original red folder of Project Phoenix. "I found something interesting," she said, showing an old note. "Our fathers didn't choose the name Phoenix just for the idea of rebirth. It was a metaphor for our families. Separated, to survive, destined to reunite stronger. On the New York horizon, the sun was setting in shades of red and gold, like the wings of the mythical phoenix. The future that Ibrahim and Michael had dreamed of was finally beginning to come true, through the children who carried their legacy of healing and hope." A year had passed since the inauguration of the Phoenix Medical Center. The hospital complex, now the largest genetic research center in the eastern United States, shone under the New York sun like a beacon of hope. Aaron ran through the corridors of the research center, his white lab coat fluttering as he greeted doctors and patients. At 7 years old, he had become the living symbol of the project, the first child completely cured through gene therapy, developed by his own cells. "Slow down, sweetheart," Leah called, smiling as her son disappeared around the next corner. She adjusted the badge on her blazer, now director of the center's accessibility program, ensuring that treatments reached those who needed them most. In the main laboratory, Caleb and Tyler observed through the glass while an international team of scientists worked. The walls displayed photos of the advances of the last year, children running, elderly people smiling, families reunited, all benefited by Project Phoenix. "Our father and Uncle Ibrahim were right," Tyler commented, his face softened by time and repentance. "True power isn't in money or buildings, it's in the ability to transform lives." John Parker, who had become the official biographer of the project, was typing on his laptop in the center's library. His new book, Phoenix Wings, The Saga of Two Families, was about to be released. The first lines glowed on the screen. "In a city built on ambition and power, two families discovered that the greatest empire is the one built on love and hope." In the hospital's therapeutic garden, Caleb found Leah sitting near the statue of the brothers. The place had become a meeting point for patients and their families, a constant reminder of the power of unity and perseverance. "Sometimes I wonder," Leah said softly, "if they knew everything would happen this way." "I think they knew," Caleb replied, sitting beside her. "The envelope your father left, the laboratory key, they planned every detail." Dr. Howard approached with a group of visiting doctors. "And here we have the heart of Project Phoenix," he explained. "A legacy of two families that transformed modern medicine." In the main auditorium, Aaron was participating in a video conference with children from hospitals around the world. His face shone on the giant screen as he shared his story, encouraging other young patients to keep hope. "The phoenix always rises," he said, repeating the words his grandfather used to use. "And we can too." Sarah hurriedly entered the garden, her eyes shining with excitement. "The results of the global program just came in. The treatment has already benefited more than 10,000 patients in 47 countries." At the end of that afternoon, the family gathered on the hospital's rooftop. The sun was setting over New York, painting the sky with the same colors as the mythical phoenix. Aaron played with his new microscope, a gift from Tyler, while the adults shared memories and plans. "I found this in the old archives," Tyler said, handing a photo to Caleb. It showed their father and Ibrahim still young in front of the empty lot where the Phoenix Medical Center stands today. On the back, a simple message: "To our children, may they fly higher than we ever dreamed." "And we flew," Leah smiled, watching Aaron. higher and farther than they could have imagined. Little Aaron looked up from his microscope. "Mom, can I show you something?" He ran to his backpack and took out a drawing, a large golden phoenix, its wings spread over an entire city. Under it, hundreds of small phoenixes flew in all directions. "These are all the people we've helped," he explained proudly. "Each one carries a little bit of our phoenix inside them." Caleb felt his eyes watering. The empire his father and uncle had built wasn't made of concrete and glass, but of hope and healing. And now, through their children, that legacy would continue to fly, reaching new horizons, transforming more lives. On the horizon, New York's lights began to twinkle, like earthly stars competing with the sky. The Phoenix Medical Center shone among them, not just as a landmark in the landscape, but as a symbol of what is possible when families unite for a purpose greater than themselves. To the future, Caleb raised his tea, a silent toast to those who came before and those who would come after. To the future, everyone responded, their voices carrying the echo of a dream that began with two brothers and now touched the whole world. And so the saga of the Phoenix continued, no longer as a guarded secret, but as a light of hope, shining ever brighter over the skies of New York and beyond. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of the Foster and Harrison families has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally inspiring stories. Find it here clicking on the left. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like to the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the power of love and hope. Don't miss our upcoming content. Share in the comments which city you're watching us from. Your participation makes our community grow even stronger, like the wings of the phoenix.